The most handsome man in Allen Park joins us today.
I don't see him anywhere.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's good, everybody? Matt Dery with you on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions, Locked On Podcast Network. Indeed, your team every day on a Tuesday, September 10th and a Wednesday, September 11th. Thanks for making us your first listen and checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. Those of you that subscribe on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel, we appreciate you doing that as well. Joining me today, you see him on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. I love this man. He is, I just said it. I think he's the most stylish guy to ever cover this team. Kyle Meinke, MLive.com. I rarely bother this young man, but here he is. What's up, man?
It's good to be here. I'm only here for the compliments. It's the only reason I come
here. So over the summer, there was a practice. I don't know what it was. And I'm sure you saw my tweet about it. You were in the background behind one of the players, just some open collared shirt, the chest hairs there. I'm like, just look at this man. Like, come on. Do you ever like go in there and go, maybe I'm just too stylish, I'm just too casual? Or are you like, I've been here long enough, I can wear whatever I want?
Well, the funny thing about that is, Matt, I think that might have been like day 2 of camp, if I'm not mistaken, maybe even day 1. It was early on. And I had just, to give you some backstory, I had just spent like 6 weeks in Europe where, yes, I was just letting the chest just fly. I was enjoying myself, spending a lot of time on the water. Wasn't so sober that summer. And I come back and, I put on the shirt. I've been wearing it a lot when I was gone and didn't think twice about like just how much chest was showing. And I saw the photo and that was the moment. It's like, okay, I'm back in reality. I should probably button it up just a little bit.
Does anybody from the Lions, like a player or Eamon or anybody ever say anything to you about it? Or just like, hey, that's Kyle. He's,
No, not so much. The only guy who ever did was Matt Patricia, and I'll just say he wasn't a fan. Big surprise, but he wasn't something I did.
That's right. You and Mike.
Yeah. I believe the term was homeless was the term Matt Patricia used, and I think if I just leave it there.
Oh my goodness.
Teach their own.
You and I were just talking about it off air, but like, it's got to be a joy for you. How many years for this for you? Number one, and number two. What a joy to cover this team as opposed to what you went through before.
I've covered the team since 2013. And just like all the fans can see, if you watch any press conference, you follow the team, you watch the team play, there's a culture change underway it's been underway for a few years now. And it affects us on the ground, obviously. And you can feel that when you go into the building, when you go into the locker room, you go into the cafeteria, like anywhere, like at the paranoia that once was in that joint and the negativity that was once in that joint was profusive. And these days, you can watch any Dan Campbell press conference, just click on any of them. It doesn't matter which one. You're going to see a guy who, he does the professional duty of trying to answer questions in a nice way, but the personality, the kindness, the understanding, the empathy, it was in short supply from roughly 2018 to 2020.
What was your take on Sunday night? What'd you think? Obviously not a perfect performance. Had to come back to win after blowing a lead, but how did you kind of see it?
I saw it as obviously, not clean. There's, I missed tackles, for example. I think Brian Branch had 3 of them right out of the gate. I'm looking at Ben Raven sitting next to me, like, who is in 32? This is Brian Branch, right? We saw drop picks. The running game was non-existent for most of that game, I would say, until overtime. Yeah, there's stuff to clean up. I think what I come back to is what Dan Campbell said after that game, which is it's week 1. Like, starters don't play in the preseason like they used to. There's going to be sloppiness. There's going to be mistakes. Week 1, it's a lot about keeping it simple, having a game plan that makes sense for you, obviously, but keeping it simple and not making mistakes. And the team that makes the fewest mistakes often wins in week 1. And I think we saw that. The Rams are very talented. The Lions are very talented. We saw 2 teams that had some issues. Even Jared Goff was talking about the cadence being an issue and causing some of the issues you saw on offense. And that's not usually an issue you have with a veteran quarterback and a veteran team and a veteran offensive line. So, yeah, I think what I take away from this is that you're 1-0. You beat a NFC contender that might come into play with seeding and playoff scenarios down the road. And yet you've learned these lessons about where you're at, where you need to clean things up. You've got the first one out of the way, and I expect, a lot of improvement going forward.
You've been in the building for all these games and certainly the playoff games last year, but how'd you assess the crowd and just was the hunger just as much, even though it wasn't a playoff game like the Lions fans got to taste twice last year?
Nothing replaces a playoff game, the do or die scenario, and then you have, of course, the theater of the Matthew Stafford storyline, the Sean McVay storyline, Jared Goff storyline, all that stuff. That's pretty juicy. We didn't really hear much about that stuff going into this game, and I can tell you, Jared Goff appreciated that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But besides that, in terms of the atmosphere in the building itself, man, electric. I mean, just electric. When I went to the stadium, it was about 3 hours and 20 minutes before kickoff. And when I got to gate, I think it's A where I went in.
Oh, you went there, right?
Yeah. I biked in. I had to see the sights,
Yeah.
So I came in that way. And I'm telling you, all you saw was people both ways down Brush Street and then across the street. I don't know, along Comerica. I forget what the street is called, but it was just a madhouse. 3 hours and 20 minutes before the game, and it just, of course, built from there. And you get to kickoff, and I look at Ben Raven sitting next to me. He's putting in earplugs in the press box. I mean, I don't know how many places in the NFL where reporters in the press box have to wear earplugs, but that speaks to it's just an electric atmosphere. And I think the Rams handled it very well. I don't remember too many procedural things going on with them. But I think it has to be, at this point, one of the best home venues, most intimidating venues in the league.
Kyle Meinke with us, of course, covered the team for, like he said, since 2013. So this is 11 seasons. From MLive.com. He mentioned Ben Raven, of course. They co-host you guys still doing the Dungeon of Doom pod?
Twice a week, baby.
Love it.
Just trying to keep up with you.
And well, we're working on it. I'm just glad somebody texted me today and said they listen to the show all the time and that they could tell my energy was up. My buddy Joe Allen, one of our everydayers, said my energy's up. I said, well, yeah, we got games. I mean, so sometimes you hit that June, July, and it's tough, but this team is so exciting and there's so much going on. You mentioned Goff before. PFF had him graded the lowest of any player on offense. I know it wasn't his greatest performance, but I guess got it done when said. But how did you view kind of his up and down night? Like you said, timing just didn't seem right. And he only hit St. Brown 3 times. I mean, that we'll never see again.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Goff did enough to win the game. He wasn't great. There were some mistakes. He had the interception. He could have had a second interception there late. He got bailed out a little bit. Made enough plays to, down the stretch to get you to overtime. I like the final series. They've done this so many times now. I mean, you're playing, again, I can't even tell you what the atmosphere was like in Ford Field. You could feel the buzz in the air. I already have a request out to the Lions about decibel levels, because I don't think it was like the record levels we saw in the playoffs, but it was extremely high. And you go out there in crunch time, and in game one, you haven't played your best. You don't have a lot of reps, live reps under your belt at this point in the year. And it was a pretty good operation, hitting, I think it was Laporta to get things going, and kicking the field goal and getting it to overtime. And I mean, Goff just had to hand off the football in overtime. So I think he liked that. It's a nice luxury to have. But I thought it was fine. I thought it was a fine first step. But yeah, the connection with St. Brown, obviously, is something you have to get going, because St. Brown's a monster. I will say that LA, I mean, when I watched the film, it looked like they had double coverage on him on almost every play. And it looked like there's a lot of, maybe not a true double team on Laporta, but they had coverages shaded that way as well. So looked to me like LA did what I would do with a team that had a lot of questions in terms of the depth at receiver and maybe some unprovenness with the consistency of Jameson Williams. Sell out against the guys who are proven, St. Brown, Laporta, and make the other guys beat you. And that's what Jamo did. And I give Goff credit for that too. Even on the 52-yard touchdown, it was a little underthrown. So you see these areas of improvement going forward. But I thought, hey, you got a good opponent in town, tough game, and you win the game. And you play well in crunch time when it matters most. It's hard to argue with that, even if there's room for improvement.
Kyle mentioned Jameson Williams. I want to talk about Jamo with Kyle coming up next, and also the rest of the offense. And certainly we'll get on the defensive side and talk a little about Tampa Bay as well with Kyle Meinke from MLive. And Locked On Lions today brought to you by our friends at Hims Men. When we leave the house, it's phone, wallet, keys. But how's your hair look as well? Come on, look at Kyle. But you're experiencing hair loss. You may not be so confident when you step outside your door. It's time to get that confidence back and restore your hair with our friends from Hims. Hims provides access to a range of hair loss treatments that work, all from the comfort of your couch. Hims makes treating hair loss simple. Doctor-trusted treatment options and clinically proven ingredients like finasteride and minoxidil. They can regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. The process is simple and 100% online. Just answer a few questions and a medical provider will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your treatment is sent directly to your door. Start your free online visit today with our friends at Hims at hims.com/LockedOnNFL. That's Hims, HIMS.com/LockedOnNFL for your personalized hair loss treatment options. Hims.com/LockedOnNFL. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Back with Kyle Meinke from MLive.com, Find Lions a beat writer who is with us today on a Tuesday. Locked On Lions team is off today, back at it tomorrow. We'll have the injury report for you tomorrow afternoon to get the week started. Tampa Bay comes to town. The Bucs and Baker Mayfield fresh off a win. As far as you mentioned before about Jameson Williams and that ball being underthrown, he had no problem adjusting to it and making the play. We're seeing a different guy. Was there a time during training camp you went, all right, this is going to be a different Jamo this year?
I mean, the first day of camp, the first week of camp, the first 2 weeks of camp, I thought Jamo, that was the best 2 weeks I've seen from him on a practice field. And I'm like, man, this offseason buzz that we've heard about, hey, like Jamo's our number 2. We liked a lot, what we saw from him late last year. The trust was growing. The snap count grew. We saw in the championship game, the NFC championship game, running touchdown, catching touchdown. I mean, he was one of the most explosive players on the field with a bunch of explosive players. So you get to camp and he starts off so fast and it's like, man, this guy might be for real. There was some struggles after that, Matt. He had a pretty bad week of practice, I would say, at one point. There was one day back in Allen Park, I think it was right after the joint practices in New York. We get back to Allen Park and he dropped 4 passes in the first 20 minutes of practice, including one against air. And I'm like, man, anyone can have a rough day. Yeah, I've seen T. Brown drop 3 practice balls in a practice, but how does this guy bounce back? And he had kind of a bad week. It really kind of sowed some doubt in my brain about where Jamo was at. But he's been on the come up since. I mean, you can see the athleticism. We've seen the athleticism since day one. The route running has come a long way since late last year. The drops, I would say, that dominated his early time in Detroit have improved quite a lot. And you get to the opener. Again, I was really curious to see which version of Jamo we're going to see. And we saw the good one. And I think that's really important for Jamo because he's such a momentum guy. He's a vibes guy, and I think starting off the season, the way that he did 36 yards on his first touch, just there's nothing special about it. He just hit inside leverage on a crosser, catches the ball, and a play that goes for 20 yards for anyone else goes 36 because he's the fastest man in Detroit, and that's what makes him special. Can he put it all together? Is he a consistent guy? We saw it in the game, the 52-yard catch. I mean, you mentioned the ball being underthrown. He also was illegally touched. I mean, the guy's like, okay, I'm beat. Like, I'm just going to grab him.
Just going to grab him.
Yeah, exactly. And he still scores the touchdown on an underthrown ball. I mean, that's how bad the dude was beat. I think the biggest test for me, Matt, with Jamo is what do we see next week? What do we see the week after that? With that guy, the ability is self-evident. It's putting it together as an NFL receiver, doing it week to week. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown, you know what you're going to get from that guy every week. And that's to be proven.
Tell me about the defense. What stood out for you and what concerns you still?
What stood out, I liked their bend but don't break. It's kind of a cliche, but it's, not necessarily something we've seen from this defense before. And they were pretty bad down the stretch, 311 passing yards allowed per game in the playoffs last year. So it's pretty amazing they made it as far as they did. It was kind of a liability. The offense was good enough to make up for it, obviously. This year, they've invested heavily in becoming more balanced between offense and defense. And there's a lot to like about the secondary. I actually was pretty encouraged by Terry and Arnold. And I know he had the 2 flags, and he's got to learn the lines of contact, what's allowed in the NFL. He was kind of a physical guy in college. He's going to have to figure out how they're going to call him in the pros. Carlton Davis, the other starting corner, was saying that when he came into the league, it was kind of the same deal for him. He's a physical corner, and he had to figure out how the rest would call it. And according to Carlton Davis, sometimes they pick just a little bit on the rookie. I don't know how much of that was going on. The PIs were light, I thought, but they were there, particularly the second one. So I can't call those blown calls or anything. Tyrann will have to learn that. But I thought throughout the rest of the game, I think he allowed 130 or 25-yard pass to Cooper Kupp. And besides that, everything was in front of him. Sure tackler. I thought he was sticky in coverage. I watched him a lot in the second and third quarters live. And I was really impressed with the way he moved. The movement skills are obvious. So I really liked what I saw from the debut of that guy. He's obviously a guy the Lions are really going to count on. In terms of concerns, maybe sticking in the secondary, like Brian Branch was not himself in that game. He's a playmaker, and he dropped a pick. Maybe he should have had a second pick. I think I counted him with 3 missed tackles in the first half of that game. One could have been a TFL. So not the cleanest effort from him, but I think it's also worth noting he missed most of the offseason while coming back from an injury. And he's also moved from slot corner to safety. So he's making a position change while not practicing a lot. And I think once he gets more comfortable back there, we'll see the Brian Branch you remember.
What do you think? And I didn't even bring this up on the show Sunday or Monday, but James Houston inactive. And
yeah.
Probably not a surprise to you, right?
It's a numbers game, right? So, Aiden Hutchinson, we saw that on day one. I guess I probably could have started there with what impressed me with the defense because he had 11 pressures. You live in the backfield. And I'm telling you right now, if Matthew Stafford didn't have the quick game going, that was a conscious thing because they had a backup offensive line basically out there. They knew he was going to get murdered. So it's just quick passes. If that wasn't the game plan from LA, you would have seen more production from Aiden. The film is dominant, as you'd expect from a guy like him versus backup offensive tackles. And then you have Marcus Davenport, who I thought had a really nice debut, a really solid debut. I think he had 6 pressures. And then you have Levi Onwuzurike, who I thought was the most improved player in training camp this year. And talk to any coach, talk to any player, ask them that question. They're probably going to tell you Levi Onwuzurike because he was that good. And we saw it right away with him, 5 pressures. He had a sack on the second series of the game. Kind of killed a potential touchdown drive there deep in the red zone. So where do you go beyond that? James Houston, you could have him up, but he's going to be your last guy in the rotation, and he only does one thing, Matt, and that's he rushes the passer. They tried in camp to make him a off-ball linebacker. It didn't take. He's just failed, I would say, in his attempt to carve out a bigger role. He's a specialized guy. He'd be a package guy. And when you have Davenport, Onwuzurike, even Pascal can move outside. Hutchinson, obviously, there's just not room for him right now.
Kyle Meinke with us from MLive. This new kickoff rule, I just don't get it. Now you got most of the teams don't even want to deal with it, so they're just booming it in the back of the end zone and going put it on the 30. It's like what are we doing? How have the Lions approached it? And I guess Vaki was back deep, and I'm sure they're going to rotate guys. But I know the league is trying, but it seems like the teams don't care.
The league is trying. I liked what I saw in camp. It's definitely interesting when you see these kicks actually returned, which I know no fans did this week, really.
Right.
Not in Detroit. In practice, they were obviously in the preseason. We saw it a little bit with backups and whatnot. I think it has potential to be interesting if teams actually elected to bring the kick out. But, Dave Phipp, the special teams coordinator in Detroit, he kind of hinted that this is what we were going to see because, you kick it through the end zone to get it at the 30. But even if you make it a playable play, maybe you save yourself 5 or 10 yards if you're excellent coverage. And the potential downside is you have 70 yards going the other way past the 30 that you can allow. So for Dave Phipp in Detroit, I kind of saw the writing on the wall because for them, it's the risk doesn't outweigh the reward.
Dave Phipp, by the way, might be. Dan Campbell's entertaining. Dave Phipp's right up there.
No doubt.
If he's a head coach one day, whoever's covering him is going to love that.
He said before he doesn't have those motivations, and the jump from special teams coordinator to head coach is kind of a difficult one. I know John Harbaugh did it; he's kind of a rarity. But I'd sign up for that job covering him because he's such a good guy and he's a good talker. He probably talks a little too much, I would say.
No, I know it's he's fantastic. All right, Bucs coming to town. I want to get Kyle's thoughts on that as well as what's going on in the division. We'll do that next with Mr. Meinke. But first, Locked On Lions brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's because it's America's #1 sports book. Tigers back at it tonight. You want to put some money down Play some player props for Tigers Rockies. Does it get any better than September Tigers Rockies? Come on. You do it at FanDuel. Plus, they got something different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you got to do is get your Google account, which everybody has, and a current form of payment. You can cancel anytime. Visit FanDuel.com. Download America's #1 sportsbook. It is FanDuel. Kyle Meinke with us from MLive.com. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the Justin Rogers shirtless video.
I'd be remiss too.
What was the reaction? It was him and Dan Skipper in the cold tub. What was the were you alerted to this from JR, or was this like, oh no, I'm scrolling through my Twitter and there it is?
I heard it was in the works. I did not actually see it happen, and I'm thankful for that.
Wow.
I'm not sure if you've ever seen Dan Skipper, without a jersey on, but he's not exactly built like a physical specimen. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was an interesting sight. I guess I heard Dan Campbell walk by when it was all going on.
Oh wow!
He did like a double take, which I understand.
See what happens when Justin leaves Gannett and now he's just a free man. He's doing whatever he wants. It's a little wild.
He's enjoying it. He's doing
a good job, no doubt. That's our buddy. All right, Sunday, Bucs come to town. We can call it the Carlton Davis revenge game. Interesting. Vegas had the Lions as 3.5-point favorites for the Rams game, 6.5 with the Bucs, and this is with no Antoine Winfield. What do you expect this week?
I think Tampa's a good team. I thought Baker played really well down the stretch last year. I liked what I saw from that offense in the playoffs last year. That was a tough game. I mean, we all remember the Rams game, obviously, unfortunately, the 49ers game, but maybe in that mix, Tampa gets talked about a little bit less. But that was a tough out. I thought the Lions played exceptionally in that game, and they were still a tough out. It's a good team. Their defensive line stood out to me as well. It's very physical, like maybe the most physical defensive line they play. And so I think that'll be a good test for Lions offensive line that I thought was decent. It certainly was like fine in week 1. I wouldn't call it like a problem or anything, but when you expect an elite offensive line, as like the Lions have, I thought maybe it fell short of the expectation until overtime, right? And they just hauled ass. I'm not sure if I can say that, but
You're good.
Okay, yeah. And it was impressive. I mean, David Montgomery, like doing his thing, but like those last 2 runs, the massive push you saw up front on the last play of the game, you got Frank Ragnow pancaking a guy into the end zone in the middle. I mean, you're going to win a lot of running plays like that. I think this week against Tampa will be a stiffer test. The Rams don't have Aaron Donald anymore, some young guys up front. I think that Tampa is exceptional at that area, and that'll pose a challenge for the Lions. I do like this matchup for the Lions, so I'm picking them to win this week.
It's interesting. Mike Evans re-signs with the Bucs. Many people thought he was going to leave in free agency. Stays. Baker stays. And there's something to continuity there. I mean, Todd Bowles, some Bucs fans wanted gone at the start of last year. It's a better, people talk about Atlanta, people talk about Green Bay in the NFC. The Bucs could be a problem. It's something to be said, right, Kyle, about consistency. It's what the Lions have had now the last few years.
You gave people time to work through progress, right? I mean, like, I think at some point, I mean, they won 3 games in Detroit in year 1, and at some point the next year, you're like, what, 1-7 or something? A lot of places around the NFL, you get fired. I remember hearing in these parts some of those talks, including on the radio here. People are, what is this guy doing? Look at these 4th down play calls, and now everyone loves it because they're winning. And the Lions gave them time to work through all this stuff. Tampa did the same thing. You alluded to it. I mean, Todd Bowles was on the ropes at one point. They were working through some stuff, and Tampa gave the situation time. And what I saw last year, I thought LA was probably a better team in playoffs last year, but Tampa, they played Detroit tough, and Detroit played an almost like flawless game, no mistakes, no turnovers. But it was just a tough game. They didn't go away until the Derek Barnes interception late in that game. So, yeah, I'm with you. Like, people talk about Jordan Love, obviously Caleb Williams entering the division, and Chicago being tough this year. I'm like, Baker Mayfield played really good football last year, almost took out Detroit in Detroit.
All right, you look at the NFC North. Obviously, the question mark is how long is Love going to be out? They host the Colts this weekend, and it's doubtful he plays. But You look around the Bears won. Their offense was pathetic. Caleb Williams won't play that bad again. And the Vikings, who I said are not going to be as bad as everybody thought, wallops the Giants. Not that beating Danny Dimes is that difficult, but what's your take on the rest of the division through for the first week?
I mean, I thought it was Lions and Packers going to this game. I love the direction of the Bears, or if you're a Lions fan, maybe fear the direction of the Bears. I think they're really doing some smart things there. They're building out around Caleb Williams in a really great way. I think the receiver core that they have is exceptional, 1 through 3. Cole Kmet's a really nice tight end. I just think with a rookie first-year quarterback, it's really like a CJ Stroud situation is pretty rare in the league. Like as we saw in week 1, like Caleb Williams is going to need some time. For me, it was really the Packers that I feared. And now they're going to have a backup quarterback situation for a few weeks. So I think the Lions have some opportunities here if they take care of business to build an early lead. I still think the Lions are the class of the division.
Come on, backup quarterback. It's Malik Willis. Remember when everybody was saying the Lions should draft Malik Willis at number 3 or 2? Yeah. It was like, wait a minute. Come on.
Yeah. It never made sense to me. I don't even think I had him in the first round of my mock draft. And I heard the same calls as you did. It never made sense.
That was a classic. So, all right, brother. Great to see you. Thanks for doing this, and keep up the great work.
Always, Matt. Good to see you, man.
Kyle Meinke with us, MLive.com on a Tuesday, Locked On Lions.